Everybody, once again, Craig DeLuz here, FPC. We are at SHOT 2018. It's a fantastic show. Ran into a good friend of ours, a good friend of FPC's. This is Mr. Mark Walters with Armed American Radio on 250 stations from coast to coast.
We think it's getting close. If we add all the simulcasts in, it's probably over that, yeah.
Right, so basically, I mean, we're talking about the voice for the Second Amendment, a voice for gun rights across the country. Once again, we appreciate everything that you do and the voice that you are.
Thanks for having me on.
Now, you know, I know how hard it is sometimes. How do you come up with enough content to cover as much time as you do on a daily basis?
You know, let me tell you why I love that question, because my mom asked me, and I refer back to this on the radio program a lot. She said to me when I quit my job and did this full time, Armed American Radio was a 1-hour show heard inside the perimeter of Atlanta only, once a week. And she said, can you really come up with enough to talk about for an hour every week? And I have to laugh now because Armed American Radio airs now 6 days a week, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and Sunday's now 3-hour program and heard in hundreds of cities, as you just mentioned. And I don't have enough hours in the day for the content that we now have. Mining for it is easy. It just comes at you. All you have to do is know where to look, quite frankly. And you know the fight because you fight it in California. There's so much coming at you every single day. Everybody said this, with Trump in office, are you really going to be able to talk about things? I have more to talk about now than I did before when Obama was in office.
So you're seeing the trend nationally.
Yeah.
What's the big story? What's the one thing that's happening that you see across the country that people need to know about?
You know, I'm going to go to the Wren versus DC case, which I know you're familiar with in Washington, DC, and maybe you haven't thought about it in these terms. I put together a column for Breitbart a number of months ago, and I listed my 5 top stories of 2017. In that top 5 was the Wren v. DC case. And I kind of broke my own rule when I was listing it, because Wren v. DC was a local Washington, D.C. case. But it's Washington, D.C., so how local is it really, right? Now for viewers, Wren v. D.C. eliminated the good cause to have to show good cause in Washington, D.C. in order to get a permit. So what does that matter to somebody in Iowa or Washington or California? Here's what matters. Every blue state attorney general begged the city of Washington, D.C. not to seek cert for SCOTUS in that case. Why? Because they knew they were going to lose, and if D.C. lost, they knew their own unconstitutional gun control laws would also fall, which proves to me that they know that their entire lie is built on a house of cards. Therefore, if they had lost that case, that's the national implication there. And what that tells me is we're winning, they know it, and that's how they hide the hypocrisy through the lies, the lie of omission. Don't take it to Supreme Court. We don't want to lose. We're all going to lose if that's the case. So we're winning this battle, and that's where I think that's
and it's interesting that you say that, because you know, we say this all the time in California. People are like, well, why do you still fight in California? Yeah. Because we have to file these cases. These cases eventually have to work their way up. You know, eventually the Supreme Court is going to hear about the right to carry. Do we have a right to bear arms? In other words, does the Constitution mean what it says?
And we all know what it means what it says. You know, when you mentioned California, I got in a lot of trouble a number of years ago with Illinois. I told people, just give up. Daley was in office as the mayor of Chicago. I said, guys, you just got to leave. Just go. You're never going to be able to exercise your right. Let me tell you something. 2 short years later, Illinois had concealed carry in effect. Daley was gone after the McDonald D.C. decision was won, and I had egg on my face, and that's why you stay and fight. So I learned a valuable lesson in front of all my listeners, in front of the nation. You have to stay and fight. Not only are you fighting for yourself, but you're fighting for your legacy. Well, this is what it's about.
Exactly. Look,
it's bigger than us.
If someone broke into your home and was going to steal your home, right? They're going to steal your home and everything in it. Would you just cut and run? Would you say, oh, well, hey, I guess the house is yours, you win, and then leave? No, you'd stay and fight. I grew up in California, and as much as the politics and the stuff dealing with advocating and fighting against our rights, I believe that as long as I have strength, I have a responsibility to fight. Even for people who don't have enough common sense to fight for themselves.
I got to be honest with you. I'm glad I'm not in your shoes. I'm glad I live in a free state. I'm glad I'm able to openly carry my firearm if I choose. I'm glad I can get a concealed carry license if I need to, which I do have, without having to prove to the state that I passed a course and shot a couple rounds through a pie hole. Okay, that somehow to them says I've been trained with a firearm. We all know that's not the case. But when it comes to you in California, the admiration I have for you guys is off the charts. I really, truly don't know how you guys do it, so hats off to you for sticking it out. It's a terrible battle that you fight, and it's getting worse. Your state now is tyrannical, and you know, unfortunately, if you live in California, I'm going to ask you this question, how much more of it are you going to take? And the reason I say that is, Craig, because at some point in time, good people, good, decent, hardworking, law-abiding people like we're seeing here are going to be forced to have to make a very terrible decision they never thought they'd have to make in their lifetime. And I'm not talking about armed insurrection. I'm talking about, am I going to follow that immoral, unconstitutional law that and you're facing it right now. We've got ammo bans in California, you got every other ban coming up. Next year you got ammunition, you got background checks for ammunition. Really? So good, decent people who've never had as much as a traffic ticket are going to have to make a decision. You know what? I'm going to drive to Arizona and buy my ammo, and the hell with them. I'm not going to follow that law.
Oh, but no, let's be clear. Now, for some reason, they can't do automatic background checks for firearms, but somehow they found out they found out a way to do one for ammunition.
Yeah.
I mean, the hypocrisy, and that's, you know, of anything. The biggest issue that I have with all of it is not just the invasion and the taking away of our rights, but the very fact that to them the truth doesn't matter. That we can sit there and give them all of the facts.
Their truth matters.
Well,
their truth matters to them. And of course that's the hypocrisy, and that's the lie.
But their truth is about how they feel.
Correct.
Not about what is, not about the facts.
Right. Barack Obama, Bill Clinton called for the same stops to illegal immigration that Donald Trump did. You can go back and watch the tapes.
Yep.
Donald Trump's a racist, and they're not, because it doesn't fit their agenda at the time. And you guys have bigger problems, bigger fish to fry out in California than immigration when it comes to your gun laws. Let's face it. What are they doing now with the waiting period? You can own how many? You own 10 guns. You still got to get a waiting period, 10 days, to buy another one. As if you wanted to do something bad, you couldn't use the 10 that you currently have.
Oh, no.
None of it makes any sense.
Let's be clear. You can go into a gun store with a concealed carry permit.
Right.
You can go into a gun store with a gun on your hip, buy a gun, and still have to wait
10 days.
10 days to get that gun.
Right. So the gun that you have on your hip, you couldn't use if you wanted to for nefarious purposes. I feel for you in California, I really do, but please know we got your back, and we're working hard for you every day. There's light at the end of the tunnel, there really is. It's a small pinprick of light out there right now. But at some point in time, I think the people are going to take the state back. Same thing in New York, same thing in Connecticut. We're seeing the same thing in Massachusetts now, where the state police is coming after the bump stocks, and if you own them after February 1st, now you're a criminal when you bought it legally. And they didn't even know what a bump stock was prior to Vegas, where we are today. They had no idea.
Keep in mind, most of the legislation doesn't even really define them as bump stocks.
Right.
It's really anything that will potentially increase the rate of fire. So we're talking aftermarket triggers,
sure. Trigger cranks, the whole 9 yards. And the question is, where do we stop?
Well, they don't, because the next group of legislators are going to come in and say, I have to do something.
Here's their deal. You know this. I want you to know this. Their ultimate goal is to take away your semi-automatic firearms. And they'll call them automatic firearms intentionally as a tool to use to come after you and your firearms. Don't ever forget that.
Don't ever forget that.
Can't forget it, brother.
How do folks follow you in case you're not on in their town? How do they find and listen to you? ArmedAmericanRadio.com.
Visit me on Facebook, facebook.com/ArmedAmericanRadio, and you can also catch me on Twitter at AARMark. Make sure to tune in. And if you can't, we're not on a show, just call your local conservative station, ask them to carry the program. They listen. They really do.
Everybody, Mark Walters, Armed American Radio, fighting the fight from coast to coast. We'll be right back at you from SHOT 2018 with some more interviews. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Fun stuff, brother. Appreciate it.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.